Ah, so everybody, this is John from Brewtally Speaking podcast. How we doing? How we doing?
Well, we're doing, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
What's going on? It's usually when like a big celebrity or a big rocker dies or like commits suicide. A lot of people start talking about mental health, and I'm like, a lot of these same people that are saying these things, you never hear from them before that.
No.
It's one thing to say, check in on your friends or checking on all this, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Well, where the fuck have you been for however many years? You know what I mean? And it's all connected. And I know I'm scatterbrained to shit because I'm like sitting here on Instagram Live trying to explain this before people tear my head off. But it is a very grand scheme, but it all comes from that whole like phenomena that we see in our society now, where victimhood is like something is like a badge, when you really should be not ashamed or anything about it, but you should find strength in it. Not say I have anxiety. Say I have anxiety, I'm gonna do this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I can't tell you, John, how many people that I've lost over the years to those same kind of things. And I've tried to help some of these people, and they were just so set in this like mentality, like I'm this. I'm like, no, man, you have to think like this. You have to. And I understand it's saying one thing is different, but it's become like, like you post a meme about killing yourself, and those are the memes that end up like, ha ha ha, share, like, dude, this is sick. And back to bring it all back. Sorry, I'm rambling, but you do see a lot of people marketing that in our music scene, and that's not healthy.
Well, I think that's
why Serpents is all about empowerment. That's why a lot of my lyrics are about empowering yourself, your inner self, your spirit. I'm giving people the tools to arm themselves and not be a victim, not fall into, society standards. Think for yourself.
But
that's something I've preached about for a long time.
I think that's the hard thing, though. At times, a classic example, in a band like Hatebreed, been saying positivity basically over some of the worst experiences you can go through. Whether it be being abused as a child, sexually, whatever, or loss, or all these things. But you got people who just look at the name Hatebreed and they go, oh, and they, the style of music they play, and they're like, oh, they're just so angry. And it's like, well, yeah, if these things happen to you, you'd be fucking angry too. And so anger isn't directly just violence. It's not just, a negative emotion. It's something that can bring out positivity. I mean, as much as this is a stupid reference, I do think I think the movie Inside Out did a really great job of showing that sometimes.
I don't know.
You haven't seen it? Okay, it's a really great movie. But basically inside it was there's all the emotions basically characterized. And so the point of it is they didn't want the sadness emotion to fucking taint everything. But then they end up finding out toward the end is sadness, actually the sad memory brought forth a happy one, and they coincide and they live together because the sad memory reminds you of some of the things that happened that brought a happy memory, and they can coexist. Just like sometimes you might be angry at something, but it ends up being a teaching moment, basically, or there's other things that can stem from it. And it's a thing where I think we think too singularly about a lot of things about life.
If you think about it, the root of anger is passion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, a low vibrational, high vibrational thing. It's just unfocused vibration. It's wild vibration in a sense. So You have the passion, and you can turn it into happiness or you can turn it into anger, whichever one you want to do. That's up to you. But like Hatebreed, when I hear Hatebreed, I just hear passion,
Mm-hmm.
like anger, like even Oceano back in the day when we were called the most angriest band in the world. I didn't really like that title, but I looked at it as like that means we're passionate about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're passionate about the just, you know.
Yeah.
But you do need that passion to turn it into something good. And if you're just straight angry, then you probably have other problems. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's another thing. Like even as a kid, like listening to Satisfaction is the Death of Desire, like such an angry sounding record, but the messages, like it was something I've never heard before. You
Right.
know, same thing with like 100 Demons. Like 100 Demons, I was like, this is kind of like uplifting lyrically, but the music is so heavy.
Yeah.
And that's honestly kind of the same approach I try and do with my band is kind of take that extreme metal, but like have uplifting lyrics because that's what I grew up on. And I don't know, I think it's an art in itself.
Well,
But
I think it is a thing where actually something that David and I talked about, and I think actually you and I talked about it because I had just seen it when we did our last chat. Is my wife showing me the TED talk on this lady doing talking about being a multi-potentialite, where essentially the crux of her TED talk is that when you grow up, we are always asked, what do you want to be? Singularly, what do you want to be when? And this lady is like, but you never hear what things do you want to be. Everyone's
yeah,
so focused on you have to do this one thing, and that this lady in her learning how to do so many different things, I want to be like, well, why don't you just do this? Why do you do this, and this? And it's like because
yeah,
I'm passionate about all of them, and maybe one passion for this thing opens up another door, and then I become passionate about this other thing I just learned about, and in turn, I think even music, I feel like people are like that, where it's like, well, you're a hardcore band. So these are your hardcore tropes or whatever that you fit into. If you don't fit into these boxes, well, then you're not hardcore, and I won't listen to you. And
yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting bands that have a lot of interesting things to say. I mean, there's some in within the realm of music that you typically play in that like may not really like what they're saying lyrically. Musically, though, I like it,
Yeah.
and
Well,
you just try not to like. I mean, I guess that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people also aren't willing to be open to having new experiences either.
no, and that's very it's very volatile right now. If you look at just the grand scheme of things, like politically in this country right now, it's people don't even want to hear any any of the other side, anything of the other side of the story, and that's just honestly years and years and years of conditioning gone just the way they wanted it to go. You have to think singularly, and that's why I think we talked about it on the podcast where I said, I hate saying genre or whatever type of genre we are because I really feel like we adopt a lot of different types of music, and I really rejected that whole sentiment. And the industry, so to speak, beat us down. We're like, you have to have a genre, you have to have a hashtag, you have to have. And I'm like, fuck, man, I hate this shit. And it's like, okay, we're Black and Deathcore. So then the people that listen to Black and Deathcore are like, this isn't Deathcore, or they're like, this isn't this. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. And I think that's honestly why I've become an outlier of sorts. And you can see by the number of views on this video, I've become an outlier in the past 10 years because I'm all over the place. I don't subscribe to one thing. Even religiously, I cherry pick from things I like with Christianity, Satanism, Luciferian, Buddhism, Taoism. And it's like, that's what I like. It makes me whole, like these piece by piece by piece, because it's more enriching to have what connects with me. And same thing with jobs. You know, all of my life I grew up, people said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" And I'm Middle Eastern. We're very old school. So if I don't say this, or this, like, what are you doing with your life? So especially now, you know, I'm 32 years old. Everybody asks me, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm a singer, a guitarist. I do a podcast. I guess I'm a vlogger now. I do that." And people are like, "But what do you do though?" I'm like, "Well, I do a bunch of shit."
And chase passion.
You know? Yeah, I'm like I take piece by piece and I throw it all together. And like, do I even mention that I produce or I record or I do that? No, I'm just like I already know it's too much for them to just say, "Oh, I do this, this, and this." So nowadays, it's become so bad that, you know, you go on some of these metal groups, Facebook groups, whatever. You know, people are like, "What band isn't slamming brutal death?" and versus what band isn't gore metal death grind? And I'm like, who? I literally will comment on some of these groups and I go, who cares?
Yeah.
All you're doing is dividing yourselves up when we have to be unified.
Mm-hmm.
If you, as people, yeah, but especially if you want to save the scene, stop dividing each other. It's beyond stupid, and it just makes me go nuts. And that's honestly why I think I've been an outlier for so long. Is because I don't play by the rules, and you have to play by the rules, otherwise you're you know.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like I feel like a huge outlier, especially when I go on my co-host show, Skyrocketing Discussion. Because like half the time, actually every single time we go on, like their thing at the end is like, "What is your album of the week?" You know, and I would say probably 95% of the time I've ever been on, my album is always like a hip hop or R&B record.
Yeah.
And I'm on a predominantly metal hardcore podcast. Like, I mean, it's like, you know, talking to a publicist today, they were like, "Oh, what's, you know, what were you listening to last Friday? Like, what's on your new playlist?" And I was like, I listen to podcasts more than I listen to music because sadly, because of doing this podcast, I usually listen to music objectively to find some kind of a question or a narrative within it to ask somebody and talk about in an interesting way that maybe no one has been asked. So it's hard to listen to music and just be like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah.
But more oftentimes than not, like, it was like, oh, lately it's been like Doja Cat, Dua Lipa, and honestly, if my record of the year was based on solely what I've listened to the most, it would be Crazy Sexy Cool by TLC because I'm still finding so many production aspects of that record that I'm just like, wow, what a fucking incredible record. You know, Babyface did something really crazy, and you know his production is like really awesome. And then you even look at the career, and it's like, okay, like there's the first one, the first record, and basically you kind of could see the raw what they were doing. Like I look at it almost like a real band, and I mean it kind of is, but it's like they just kind of were all over the place. Didn't really have a sound per se. It just was kind of really raw and awesome. And you got Crazy Sexy Cool and Babyface. You got them with a producer who knew how to work with voices and so forth. Um,
Yeah.
and as such, were able to craft a really great sounding record, really great vocal harmonies, tight production. You know, no really, you know, it wasn't as all over the place. Then what was
Yeah.
you kind of go when you get to fan mail, you know, them working with Dallas Austin at the time, and him doing a lot more live instrumentation. Um, and you know, you look at a song like "Unpretty" or some of the stuff where they're using like real guitars and stuff like that, and you're just like, "Oh wow, this is wild!" Like seeing how he took them to a different level from a production standpoint and so forth. And you know, I say all these things, and I can talk about phrasing of lyrics and vocal patterns and so forth. And people are just like, "I've never noticed. I just thought it was pop music." And I'm like, I mean, it is, but like that's when you start kind of dissecting it a little bit more and looking at like what's going on. You start understanding why some of these producers are able to elevate an artist from just being that raw product to being something better. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. So
That's
for me, like
that's
really getting into a lot of that, like the TLC catalog, and just dissecting it.
I will say that's what Joey Sturgis did with Oceano. He took what we were doing and brought us to a whole nother level that honestly we didn't even see coming to fruition. I would say.
Right.
I totally back that statement. You know, like if you paid attention, I think have you hosted some of my best of lists for the year or no?
For what, like on Spotify and so forth?
Like on your podcast? No, I didn't give you that, right?
No, you didn't.
Well, basically, for the last 4 years, I've been making best of Spotify playlists, and you know, let me see the top six, or yeah, the top. I'll give you 10. For last year was Cave In, Cattle Decapitation, Men I Trust, Tool, Warforged, Billie Eilish, Tom York, My Wrath, Aurora. Like I'm all over the place, and that's why I make these playlists because I'm trying to tell people, hey, dude, it's okay. It's okay to like different things. That's why earlier on this live stream, I was like, I'm not black metal enough. This doesn't look black metal enough for people, but whatever. It's like it's okay to like different things. Like one of my favorite records in the past like 5 years is probably Astro World. Like I love Astro World. Like I don't know, man. I try and turn people on to what I'm listening to through playlists and stuff without being like, hey guys, have you heard the new Armin van Buuren mixtape? You know what I mean? Like I try and do that, and I try and do my best as a voice in the community to try and show people it's okay, because I've been doing this all 18 years. I've been doing this shit.